Hey guys, so I'm going to try these new review videos as part of our quick checks. So here we go. So we've been talking about sustainability, the idea that we need to meet the needs of our community with the resources around us, but we need to think about the impacts that has on the environment and how we preserve resources for the future. What we're really talking about is ecology and the study of how organisms interact with each other and also with the environment. Um, Ultimately, we were thinking about ecosystems, how organisms and the community of organisms interact with that physical environment. So when we talked about Jaffrey Lake, we were actually talking about the Jaffrey Lake ecosystem, how humans and wildlife in that lake interact with the water itself in that physical environment. And then we were talking about sustainability and can we support the diversity and ecological processes through time without uh, eliminating future possibilities. In activity one, we wanted to know how does change affect ecosystem? And so we looked at 4 different ecosystems. We started in Chesapeake Bay, looking at blue crabs. Because of changes in the environment caused by pollution, human population overfishing, we ended up with cloudier water, less eelgrass. These crabs are not able to live. They end up with no oxygen in the water and dead zones, so they need somewhere to try to go. And you see this crab jubilee. You see thousands of crabs washing up on shore trying to get the oxygen they need, ultimately dying. It has huge economic impacts, huge social impacts, because this has been a way of life in this area for a long time. Then we moved to Australia. We looked at the march of the toads in cane fields. Uh, they were hoping to get rid of insect invaders, and so they brought in these toads to eat them. Found out the toads don't really eat the insects, but they eat everything else, and ultimately really hurt the biodiversity of the area. The problem is there's not any great natural predators because these toads, as you can see, are covered with giant poisonous pustules. Ultimately, they kill off any predators that try to eat them, and so they end up overrunning the area. Again, a huge economic impact uh, in terms of the cost of trying to contain these toads, in terms of uh, trying to still maintain that insect population or get rid of the insect population. They lost money for tourism. They lost food sources that were important for peoples. Then we looked at bleaching of the reefs. All around the world, reefs provide a great part of the ocean ecosystem. They contribute to the biodiversity in the oceans and protections for coastal communities and their way of life. Because of pollution, because of climate change, because of local practices of fishing, we are getting damage to reefs. We're seeing bleaching of reefs where the healthy, uh, vibrant color of the reef is going away as algae are expelled and polyps die, and ultimately the reef itself starts to die and all the biodiversity around it leads to lots of problems because of the physical lack of the reef, also because of wildlife, huge economic impacts again, huge social impacts because of, again, this being a way of life for many people. Finally, we looked at the Yellowstone fires of 1988, caused by climate change again, human activity, uh, things, natural causes like lightning. There were huge fires that overtook a lot of the park. Uh, you had to deal with the environmental effects of smoke, some of the things that we've seen from, and we know in our own experience with wildfires. But then there were some positives. Goes back to that: is every change good or bad? Because ultimately, uh, a fire going through an area can clear things out and allow new life to spring up. So in terms of Yellowstone, you start to see new plants grow in, and then ultimately, scientists have been able to track the regrowth of lots of parts of Yellowstone. So that's been an interesting experiment for scientists to see uh, over time. And we'll get back into that a little bit more as we move through this course. So I just wanted to kind of quickly hit on those for those of you that didn't get to read each one. Ultimately, again, we just want to look at that idea of how does change affect ecosystem? How can we see the cause and the effects of that? So thanks, and we'll hope your quick check goes well. Let me know what you think and if you have questions, and we'll check back in with you next time in class.